Hello YouTube, it's Dorian. Today on my distro hopping adventure, I'm trying to wrap up the end of the year with a few more distro examples, how to install them, and show you really quick how they work. And up next is openSUSE. I just finished Manjaro, which I really liked, but the end result ended up in a broken system because as it's a rolling release, I got some new updates that killed my Wi-Fi. It gave me a ton of PCI Express errors. It wrecked my graphics. It was just not good. I reinstalled, everything worked again, and as soon as the next updates came out, dead. So I decided to stick with rolling release. So I was like, all right, I'll go with openSUSE, and it comes in two flavors. You can get Leap, which is a fixed release, and Tumbleweed, which is a rolling release. Right? Tumbleweed, rolling release. Anyways, yeah, I'm gonna show you real quick here a little video from earlier. This was the installation. If you're not sure about the difference between a fixed release and rolling release, what I'm talking about, I have a video that explains it. I talk about it a little bit, so check my other videos. As this is a rolling release, you get GNOME 3.26.2, and as you can see, it is Tumbleweed. So I'll go through with the install here. This is on a virtual machine, and later I'm also going to show you a couple of things like how to, I wanted to get rid of the little full screen thing at the bottom, that's why I'm restarting here. How to get your hybrid graphics videos up and running, and what happens if you can't boot. There is an issue that I ran into, and it had to do with the hybrid Intel Nvidia graphics. Now when you're booting into the installation media, whether it's USB or CD, I have another video that shows you how to do that if you don't know how. This little graphical part, you could just hit escape and then you could see what's actually going on in the background, which I like to do, and it also gives you a chance to see if anything's going wrong. So for example, what was happening to me is these two lines at the top here, loading basic drivers. If you see just this or setting hardware detection okay and it's stuck there, you probably have the same problem that I did. And I saw in a forum someone was saying just leave it. Someone was saying they left it for 45 minutes and then it worked. I left it for 3 hours and it didn't work. This is on a virtual machine, so this should work pretty good. I mean, if you're just testing it out, it should be no problem. But on my actual machine, on my hardware, it would not get past this starting hardware detection. So after going through the installation here real quick, I'll show you what to do to get past that point. Another thing about the openSUSE installation is it's a little bit different. Mainly the partitioning part. It's a little confusing. It kind of tells you what it's going to do, and then you have to tell it, no, I don't want that. It proposes what it's going to do, and you have to keep an eye on that. If you're installing on a virtual machine, it's not a big deal. If you're installing it on a system and it's going to be your only operating system, not a big deal. Here's your standard stuff. Pick your language and your keyboard. If you're installing it on a system that already has an operating system on it, you have to really be careful. So here it's showing you what it's suggesting. It's going to do a swap partition here. It's going to do a root partition with the BTRFS file system, and then it's going to do a separate home partition and all this other stuff. Here's where you have to be careful, because on mine, for example, I have a triple boot. I've got Windows 10, I've got Ubuntu 16.04, and then I was installing this. So what it wanted to do, it wanted to install openSUSE on my SDA1 partition, which is my Ubuntu partition. It would have just, had I not checked and just click next, it would have installed right over top of Ubuntu, and I would have been very upset. So if you go to Edit Proposal Settings, you'll see its suggestions, which you can change. The BTR file system, I'm not really familiar with. You could do snapshots and restores, which I think sounds very handy, but for compatibility reasons and just because I don't like change, I'm switching it to the ext4, which most Linux systems use. So you can go ahead and change that, or if you want to try it out, go ahead. Me, I didn't want to. So now you can see it updated the suggested partitioning list here, and it made a 20 gig root partition and a 58 gig home partition. Now that's not for everybody. I like to do that because you can reinstall your system and keep all your files. If you don't want to do that, you can just uncheck this box here, and then it's just going to install the whole root onto whichever partition. If you click on this, it's just going to bring you through kind of a wizard, but you basically end up with the same result in the end. Or you can go Expert Partitioner. So this one you want to pay attention to, especially if you have an existing system on here, because you'll see all your partitions here from your other systems. What you want to watch for is this column here. If there's an F, that means it's going to format that partition. And then the next column is if it's going to be encrypted. Up to you if you want to encrypt it or not. I don't like doing it. I like having access. You can right click and edit any of these, and you can change what they are. Right click and edit your root. And now one thing that I do, leave these options alone. I'm just showing you what's in here, but leave those alone. If you go into the fstab options, you could set the volume label, which I like to do because, like I said, I multi-boot, so I like to name my volumes so that when I'm looking at my drive, I could say, oh, right, that's my Ubuntu partition, that's my openSUSE partition, and whatnot. Then you can go down, you can see your installation summary, what it's going to do, and you can change the default file system, and you can mount by the UUID or mount by the device name. The rest of this stuff, just leave it alone. Alright, so now you're happy with that. You're going to go next. You're going to pick, like any other distro, you're going to pick where you are for your time zone. And then you're going to set up your desktop, whichever one you want. I like GNOME or GNOME. And then you just go in and create your user. I suggest leaving use this password for system administrator checked, just because it's a lot easier. I like to disable automatic login. That's totally up to you. And it'll complain that I have a crappy password because it's short and it's all lowercase and it's dangerous, but it's a virtual machine, so I don't care. And you also see at the top it says do not install boot code into the master boot record. Well, I install it. I install it everywhere. Instead of just into the root of the partition, I want it in the master boot record as well. That's something else that if you check my dual boot video, you can get a bit more information on whether you want to do that or not. And then your firewall settings, you can enable, disable right here before you start. I disable it because it's a virtual machine. I don't really care. And it's going to say, are you sure you want to do this? Yes, you're sure. And then you can click on the details tab and you can actually see what it's doing as it's installing, and drink your coffee and watch the lovely progress bars. But since this is a virtual machine and I'm not going to make you watch this whole progress bar for 8 minutes, just say thanks for that and just cancel that and shut it down. So what was the other thing? Right. The booting issue. If you have a booting problem, if you have a problem just getting into the installer, what you can do is as it boots up, you're going to get the little light bulb. You're going to go down to installation, and in boot options at the bottom, if you type something, it's going to show up down here at the bottom of the boot options. So what you're going to want to do is do ACPI equals off, and then you're going to hit enter, and it's going to boot in. The ACPI is your power management stuff, especially if you have a hybrid card like I have, the Intel Nvidia dual hybrid card. It'll freeze on that hardware detection. I'm assuming because it's trying to detect the Nvidia card, but the Nvidia card is powered off. So by disabling the power management, both cards will be on, it'll detect them, and it'll just carry on. So I'm going to close this down, and I'm going to show you what you can do. So once it's installed, let me just remove the disk. Once it's installed, hopefully, if you start up your machine, you'll get the grub bootloader. If you just press up or down, it'll cancel the countdown. Here you can press E on your keyboard, and you'll see all the boot options. If you scroll down, you can see this one here that says Linux. These are all your boot options, and you can see splash equals silent, quiet, show options. This one here, if you installed it with ACPI equals off, it should say ACPI equals off. If not, you can just hit backspace, take all this out, because by removing those lines, it's going to show you absolutely everything that it's doing instead of showing the little pretty splash screen. Because if your system freezes and it's showing the splash screen, hitting escape isn't going to do anything because your system's frozen. At least if you're seeing what's going on line by line and it freezes, you could see where it froze. And if it displayed an error, that's even better because that's going to help you out. So here you can go ACPI equals off, and then you could boot into your system. There's some documentation which is really good from openSUSE. I'll put this link in the description, but once you get into your system, I'll just say this too, sorry. If ACPI equals off does not get into your system, you can go one step further and add the number 1 to it. Okay, and then you're going to hit F10, and now it's going to boot into a single user mode. And you're going to see all this text, everything that's going on in the background. Password. Now you can see what just happened. You have to pay attention here because it says right here next to the cursor, give root password for maintenance, but then other stuff showed up. So it looks like it's still waiting, but it's actually waiting for the password still, so pay attention to that. So you're going to enter in your password, and now you're in as root. So now you can do various things. One thing I'll show you real quick since I'm here, if you want to make permanent boot changes, actually no, you know what? I'll do the driver thing first. So in this web page, which I'll put the link in the description, you can basically follow this step by step. I did not do this. I basically started here, install Bumblebee BB switch, add your user to the Bumblebee group, use your system control to enable and start it, blacklist Nouveau, which is the Nouveau driver, which is used by default. You're just going to type all this stuff in, all right? And I would also do this. If you are at this part here, and this is how you got into your system, you're going to have to, you're not going to have to type sudo. You don't have to do sudo and all your commands because you're already root. Sudo just makes you perform root commands. So if you are already root, you could skip all the sudo parts and just go zipper, yada, yada, yada. All right, so I did that. If you plan to use 32-bit apps like Steam, which I do, I did this. Optional, install Nvidia driver. I did this. Pay attention though, because these instructions are for the Leap release. So skip this and go to Tumbleweed. So I did all this. It worked. I did the opt-to-run status. Opt-to-run status. Bumblebee ready. Discrete video card is off. Alright, so then it worked. And then you could do opt-to-run GLX gears. So opt-to-run GLX. Actually, it's spheres. Did it say spheres? Yeah, it's saying gears, but I have spheres. Either way, it's going to power up the video card and then show this cool little thing. You could see 304 frames per second. It's obviously using my GPU. Another way that you could tell is I have a nifty little thing here. GeForce GTX 960M is on. So I can close this. That'll shut down. Where did I get that? It is a GNOME extension. And it is called Bumblebee Status. I'll put the link to that in the description as well. I used Bumblebee Indicator, I think it was, in Ubuntu. It doesn't work anymore, but Bumblebee Status does work. So now you can see, now that I've closed that GLX spheres, that my video card has powered itself off again. Okay, and also another thing is this lets you go into your Nvidia X server settings and change things. You could see the GPU temperature and whatnot. And the rest of the stuff I didn't do. There's some troubleshooting problem stuff you could follow. Check the state of your card. So you can go cat brock ACPI BB switch. It's on. Well, it's not on, it's off actually, but that will probably change. It's probably because my fan might still be running. And then you can run commands with opt-to-run Steam, opt-to-run this. So basically, you do all this and it'll work. But because you installed your system with ACPI equals off, your power management will still be off. You need to re-enable that. So you do that in openSUSE with YAST, Y-A-S-T. So now you can go into here and you go to System, go over to Bootloader, and it's a little messy in the virtual machine with this text popping up over top, but you can still see what you need to see. Basically, you could see next to the highlighted, my mouse doesn't show up in here, but next to the boot code options, it says kernel parameters. So if I go Alt-K, you can see that change. If I do Alt-D, just hold Alt and then whatever letter is yellow, whichever one's highlighted. And then you could see just below it says optional kernel command line parameters. And you can see that looks familiar on the right with splash equals silent, quiet, show opts. So you can do Alt-P. And then in here, you'll probably still have ACPI equals off. So what you're going to do is you're going to remove that. And you're going to go Alt-O for OK. And it's going to fix your bootloader. This is the equivalent in other distributions as update grub, but openSUSE doesn't have update grub. So this is where you'll want to make your changes, is in YAST. YAST is awesome. I like it a lot. It's a SUSE creation. And if you open YAST in your desktop environment, it shows you a desktop version of it. Alright, so now I can shut down now. So another thing I want to show you, if you do shut down or you do reboot, it'll just say at the bottom reboot system halted or system rebooting, and it'll freeze. That's because your ACPI equals off at the beginning disabled all your power management, and so your operating system cannot shut down or reboot. It can't control the motherboard's power. So then you'll just hit your power button or hit your reset button manually and force it, which is fine because the system is already set up to be shut down. Yeah, so other than that, so far, I really like SUSE. I will show you what I was talking about earlier. YAST. It wants your password, your root password. And you can see this is basically what I was in just a moment ago, but it was the terminal version. This is the GUI version, but it has all the same stuff. And so here you can change your repositories, software management. You could pin software management separately to your dock if you want to, which I did. So I can just open it directly. And you just do that by doing this, type software, or find it, and then you can add or remove from favorites, and then you don't have to go through YAST, it just goes straight into it. It just skips a step. One thing I found that I fixed in Manjaro was, I'll just skip this here for now. Yeah, I'll just close that. When you're browsing in Nautilus, you have your nice little grid with all your files. But if you go to certain folders that have long file names, this starts to happen. Now, this is because of a package named Pango. You can see here too that they don't quite line up. It's ugly. It's not wrapping. It's not forcing these lines to wrap. It's just putting the whole file name out there. In Manjaro, I was able to fix this by downgrading Pango from 1.40.13 to 0.12. Not really an option in openSUSE, but I did upgrade to a development version of 0.14, one version up, which did fix it, but it was starting to cause the X server to crash, so I decided, okay, I'll wait. There's a bug in it. It's going to be coming out soon, and because it's tumbleweed, it's a rolling release, it'll come out fairly quickly. So yeah, this is the software manager, the package manager, and it's not the prettiest, but it works really well. You just search for a package and then check the box, uncheck the box, hit accept, and off it goes. Another difference with openSUSE I would recommend is try to do your stuff when it comes to package management and everything. Use it in the terminal, because you could just go sudo zipper refresh or ref. You can type in a short name for it, and then it'll go through all your repositories, check for updates, and you can go through and dupe, which is the proper way to update, as the chairman of openSUSE, Richard Brown, actually told me on Twitter, don't use update, use dupe. And then it'll go through and tell me, oh, there's nothing to do. The last time I tried to do it, it was warning me about this driver, and then it's experimental, might cause issues. So I didn't like that. But with zipper, you can just go sudo zipper adlock package name, and then it'll just ignore that from now on. So when you're doing an upgrade, it won't upgrade that. It'll just ignore it. What else? Oh yeah, and I posted on Twitter. Do a symlink. Zipper doesn't flow very well for me, so you could just do sudo zref. I just did a symlink that is Z from zipper. Just easier for me to type because I'm lazy. And sort of similar to apt-get, you just type install for a package. You can also just type in for short, and you could say, what do I not have? Well, I'll just type something that I already have. It doesn't matter. So then it'll come through, and just like anything else. You can also do search. You can type search, or you can just type SE. And it'll come up and it'll give you a list of the ones that match in the repositories, and if it's installed or if it can be upgraded and whatnot. But yeah, so that's about it for now. That's how to install openSUSE. I don't think I skipped anything. Oh yeah, starting programs. I covered that with OptiRun. There's OptiRun, and there's also Primus Run. I don't know why, but it doesn't do the same. Like, it says that my GeForce is on, but it's only at 59 frames per second. But I think it's because this is locked. This is VSync locked to my display, which is why it'll only go this fast, which is okay for gaming. I've used both. Doesn't really seem to make a difference. But yeah, that's it for me for now. If you like my videos, subscribe, like it, share it. If you have any suggestions for which distro to try next, I'm gonna have to veto Gen 2 because I tried to load up Gen 2. It really doesn't like my hardware. I might do it on another machine, but you know what? I like a challenge. I like to know that I'm trying to install something on more difficult hardware, I guess, because then if I can get it to work, you can get it to work on a simpler machine. But that's just me, and I really like my laptop, so this is my daily driver. I use it wherever I want, which is nice. But yeah, that's it for now. If you have any questions, you can hit me up here. I'm also on Twitter at Dorian.slash. And till next time, see you later.